build your game. In this video, I'm going to talk about the 10 essential skills you need to have a complete game. The 10 areas are takedowns, guard pull counters, top retention, speed passing, pressure passing, backtakes and submission of passing, guard pull, double pull, guard retention, upper body guard, lower body guard, and the kneeling guard. Now, you might have noticed that it's actually 12 here, but that's because 2 of them are optional. So usually people choose either to be a top player and go for takedowns and guard pull counters, or if you're a guard puller, you would choose the guard pull and the double pull scenario. So the top one is always if the opponent stays standing. So if you would go for a takedown or you go for a guard pull. The second one is if your opponent pulls guard, because you cannot really stop guard pulls from happening. So if you're a top player, you probably want to go for a guard pull counter. So you try either to score 2 points of the guard pull, or you at least try to get to a really good passing position right off the guard pull, so you don't let the opponent establish himself. On the other hand, if you're a guard puller, you need to work on double pull because you don't want to be forced on top. So you pull with the guy and then you work from there. The next 2 are mostly skills. So you have top retention and guard retention. I'm going to start with guard retention because that's probably a little bit more familiar to most people. So that's your skill of keeping your guard and keeping your opponent in your guard, mostly when you don't have an actual guard with grips established. So that's when you play it really loose and you keep your knees to your chest, cross step, and always free your feet and knees, things like that. The top retention, on the other hand, is your unsweepability. So the ability to stay on top when you're on top. It's also really important, but I think a lot of BJJ people, especially the ones that like to pull guard, neglect this part. So what you want to do there is you basically want to stay on top. And if someone puts you on your back, you don't accept it, you just keep getting up again. So here your technical stand-ups and scrambling comes into play. That's a really important skill to learn as well. Then the 3 main areas for each top and bottom. So for the top game, we have speed passing, which is like usually your around the leg passing, like bullfighter passes, leg drags, things like that. And your pressure passing, which is like knee slide passing, over under, double under, things like that. Then we also have backtake submissions of the passes, because a lot of times if your opponent has a really good guard, it's not possible to get through the guard with just speed and pressure passing. But if you combine it together with backtakes and submissions as well, you can usually create an opening for at least one of the 3. Usually you would go for speed passing when your opponent's guard retention is not too good, like he's pushing you away, like he's disconnecting his knees from his chest. That's a good time to go for a speed pass. If he keeps his knees glued to his chest, that's when you go for pressure passing. And a lot of times they try to push you away, so it opens up a speed pass. You go for a speed pass, they close it again, which opens a pressure pass again. So they work really well together. And then if you see a backtake or a submission opportunity, you add that in and you have a really strong offensive top game. On the guard side, you cannot really choose which guard you want to play. That's really important to understand, because if you pick the wrong guard in the wrong scenario, you're going to get passed. So the 3 main guards we have is an upper body guard, a lower body guard, and a kneeling guard. And of course, you can pick whatever you like here. So if an upper body guard, an example would be like a collar sleeve guard, a spider guard, a lasso guard. Anything that connects you to your opponent's upper body. And that's what you use when he's approaching your guard, bent over with his hands first, like looking to grip fight and establish grips on you. Usually you enter into your upper body guard if someone grabs your leg and like tries to speed pass you. The lower body guard, on the other hand, is when your opponent is not giving you access to his upper body. So he's walking with the legs forward. So here, things like the De La Riva guard, shin on shin guard, sitting guard, that's where those guards come into play. The kneeling guard, most of the time it's going to be your close guard, but you could also play a butterfly guard, things like that. That's when your opponent's on the knees and like basically trying to deny you the upper and the lower body guard. So you have to play a guard from the knees as well. Quick addition here, like there's also of course a mix between the 2, like the combat base, but then you can usually play either an upper body or a lower body guard on your opponent, because as long as one is off the mat, you will usually have an opening. You might notice there's not really like a submission game in there. Of course, there's the backtakes and submissions from the top game, but that's not really your high percentage submissions, because to me, anything after your pass is really like just a nice to have. The match usually gets decided by those areas, so that's what we're focusing on here. If you pass the guard at a high level, you probably have the match in the back. Not always, of course, but most of the time. If you take your opponent's back, things like that. Or, of course, if you go for a submission from bottom, that gives you the win. So it doesn't make much sense, in my opinion, to build your game around the end game. Like, you just take what the opponent gives you. So if you're on the back and you find a choke, perfect. If he gives you an armbar, perfect. Like, you shouldn't try to funnel your opponent towards a specific submission, in my opinion. You just start winning the match, and once you're up on points, the opportunities will present themselves. And if your opponent's just balling up, not defending, you win anyway. So it's on him to create some openings that he can exploit. But if you try to force something, then your opponent has a big chance of using that to escape. So you see a common theme here. It's always based off your opponent's reaction. There's not a single thing that always works. You always have to go off your opponent's reaction and adjust accordingly, whether that's how you pass the guard, or whether that's how you play guard, or even once you pass or are in a dominant position, how you finish the match. So I hope this helps. Really think this through, like note those things down, try to figure out what kind of things you want to play. In the beginning, it can just be one thing. Like, let's say I'm speed passing, maybe I just pick a bullfighter pass and get really good at bullfighter passing, and I combine that with a knee slide pass, for example. And you can, of course, also put in some submissions. Maybe you also start looking for kimuras of your passing, for example. An upper body guard, maybe you pick the collar sleeve guard, combining with a De La Riva guard, and close guard if your opponent drops on the knees. Of course, you can always add more to that later, but if you only have one good thing in each area, you're going to have a really solid game. And if you watch top competitors, you will notice that a lot of them, you can really pick one of each category, and that's what they usually go for. Now, of course, most of them know how to play other things as well, and if their A game's not working, they'll have a B game, and that's something for another video, like your A and the B game. But with their A game, you can definitely pick one each for each category.